If the child I raised for 5 years now points a knife at my chest, and what did all my sacrifices mean? Series 1, Marrying My Sister's Husband. Chapter 1. After my sister died, I married her husband, Nick Ambrose. That made me the stepmom to my 5-year-old nephew, Jaden Ambrose. On my birthday, I accidentally wore one of my late sister's dresses. In front of everyone, 5-year-old Jaden threw my birthday cake straight into my face. He looked down at me, covered in frosting, with the same cold and motionless stare as his father. "Don't think you can replace my mom just because you married into the Ambrose family," he sneered. "You gold-digging tramp." Then his voice dropped into something darker, hateful. "I wish it had been you who died. Then we'd be lighting candles for your memorial, not your damn birthday. I swear, when I grow up, the first thing I'm doing is kicking you out of this house." The cake, overly sweet with extra frosting, slid toward the corner of my mouth, but all I tasted was bitterness. I stared at the little boy I had raised with my own hands, and strangely, I just felt done. If a child doesn't love you, maybe it's time to let go. But after I left, both Nick and Jaden came crawling back, full of regret, begging me to forgive them. "Aria, are you sure about divorcing Nick?" Mrs. Fusco asked me over the phone, her voice full of concern. "Jaden's still so young. He needs you." I stood at the stove, one hand braced on the counter, and replied calmly, "I married Nick because of the agreement. Jaden's 5 now, he can take care of himself. He doesn't need me anymore." I owed Mrs. Fusco a huge debt. To repay her kindness, I agreed to a 5-year marriage contract. 5 years of playing house, acting like the perfect Ambrose wife, taking care of Nick and his son. But the contract ends tomorrow. I'm finally free. Before she could respond, I felt a sharp sting on my forehead. Something hard hit me. A rock clattered onto the tiled floor. My hands flew up to cover the gash. Blood trickled down my face as I turned to see Jaden standing just outside the window. His arms were crossed, eyes narrowed with disdain. "Snitching to Grandma again? Looks like that little lesson I gave you wasn't enough. I should be sending you to the ground. Keep my mama company." I stared at him, stunned, as everything from an hour ago came rushing back. It was my 25th birthday. I'd never celebrated one before, so I treated myself to a small cake. But I accidentally wore my late sister's dress, and the sight of it sent Jaden into a rage. He snatched the cake and scrawled "RIP" across it with black paint. Then, for the final touch, he stuck white chrysanthemums on top, flowers meant for the dead. My birthday cake had turned into a funeral offering. He laughed, delighted with his work. "You think you deserve a birthday? If it weren't for you, my mom wouldn't be dead, and would have a broken family. Remember this, from now on, today isn't your birthday, it's your death day." Then, with everyone watching, he slammed the cake into my face and ruined the only day I'd been looking forward to. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked to the kitchen in silence. He followed me in, angry that I hadn't reacted. Jaden wasn't satisfied. "What, you upset now? You're so petty," he snapped. "I swear, when I grow up, the first thing I'm doing is kicking you out of this house." I looked at him, this child I'd poured 5 years of love and energy into, and felt my heart sink. I was so tired. "You won't need to," I told him quietly. "I'm leaving this house tomorrow." Then I walked out and went to the living room to clean up the wound on my forehead. I was bandaging my bleeding forehead when I heard the shattering of glass from upstairs. A chill ran down my spine. I ran up the stairs and found the only keepsake my mother had left me, a jade bracelet smashed into glittering pieces. The shards sparkled under the light, stabbing into my heart. I dropped to my knees and picked them up one by one, careful not to cut myself. I hadn't cried when Nick's parent gave me hell for years. I hadn't cried when Nick treated me like a stand-in for my sister, using me for stress relief and never anything more. I didn't even cry when Jaden publicly humiliated me with the cake. But now, looking at the broken bracelet my mom left me, I broke. The tears came fast, hot and out of control. That bracelet was the last thing I had from someone who truly loved me. Jaden stood nearby, watching me crumble. Then he smirked. Hurts, doesn't it? Having the one thing you care about destroyed? That's what you get for killing my mom. Now I'll destroy everything you care about. Murderer. That's when I finally lost it. I grabbed him by the arm and dragged him forward. You pick all the pieces up now and put them back together. Shock flashed in his eyes, probably because he had never seen me in such state. But before he could react, a hand shoved me hard, sending me back to the ground. What the hell is wrong with you? Nick glared at me with bloodshot eyes. It's just a bracelet. How could you go off on a kid over it? I sat there on the floor, stunned, staring up at the man I'd once vowed to love. To him, it was just a cheap piece of jewelry, but to me, it was a treasure, the most priceless thing in the world. 10 years ago, there was an earthquake in my hometown. My mother died protecting me. She used her body to shield me from falling concrete. The cement slab pierced right through her. I lost her that day. Mrs. Fusco found me years later when I was 15, paid for my schooling, gave me a future. That's how I ended up here. Nick must have realized he'd gone too far. He pushed Jaden out of the room and closed the door. He came over, lifted me from the floor, and laid me down on the bed, gently brushing away my tears. I thought you were more mature than this, he said softly. You shouldn't be lashing out at a kid. You owe Jaden an apology. Then he leaned down and started unbuttoning my blouse. It's your birthday. Let me make it up to you. Consider it a reward for everything you've done for this family. I inhaled sharply and pushed his hand away. Nick, I said, voice calm but firm, I want a divorce. Chapter 2. Jaden throws tantrums and now you too? Nick's face twisted in frustration. He's just a kid, but you're an adult. Why can't you try to understand him? Once he grows up, he'll get it. I'm tired from work. Stop adding to my stress, okay? I don't have the energy to deal with you. I wanted to tell him I didn't need him to fix anything. Just listen. But to Nick, everything I said sounded like complaint. His eyes turned cold, all traces of desire gone. I've got work to do, he muttered, storming out and slamming the door behind him. I'm not sleeping with you tonight. I didn't even bother counting how many times he'd left me like that. At this point, I was nothing more than a convenient toy to him, there when he wanted me, invisible when he didn't. But after tonight, I wouldn't be anyone's toy anymore. I spent the whole night at the table, carefully trying to glue my mother's bracelet back together. It was hopeless, of course. Jade doesn't mend easy. But I still tried. All I had was some cheap superglue and a prayer. By the time I looked out the window, the sun was up. Mrs. Fusco had sent me a message asking me to come over. I threw on a coat and went. She was sitting in the living room when I arrived, her face tight with worry. When she saw me, she sighed. I heard about what happened yesterday. Jaden's a lot like his dad, stubborn and hard to handle. But you raised him, Arya. There has to be some part of him that cares about you. Give him time. He'll understand one day. Then she looked me in the eyes. Are you really ready to walk away from the family you've built all these years? Her words gave me pause. But can it still be called a family if there's no love left in it? My thoughts drifted back to the late Gianna. Gianna and Nick had been inseparable since childhood, best friends, sweethearts, soulmates. They grew up side by side, went through every phase of life together, and eventually got married. They were the kind of couple people looked at with envy. Until 5 years ago, when Gianna died suddenly. Nick was never the same after that. It was like half of him had died with her. He walked around like an empty shell, neglecting even his most basic needs, and that included their young son. Mrs. Fusco was worried sick. She didn't want Jaden to grow up without a mother's love. But she couldn't just trust anyone to fill that role. She was terrified some random woman would ruin everything. So one day she came to me with a proposal, marry Nick, raise Jaden, and be a mother figure to her only grandson. In the past 5 years, I gave everything I had to keep the Fusco household running like clockwork. I raised Jaden into the golden boy everyone admired. I even took on Nick's emotional mess, trying to make life easier for him. But no matter what I did, it never earned me a sliver of their love. To Nick, I was nothing more than a warm body, someone he turned to only when desire hit. The rest of the time, I might as well have been invisible. As for Jaden, he hated me. Because of a few words from outsiders gossiping about me, he hated me with every fiber of his being. Every time he looked at me, it was like he was willing me to die. How could that situation fit to ever be called a family? Mrs. Fusco eventually gave up, trying to talk me out of leaving. Instead, she handed me the divorce papers and told me that once I signed, I'd finally be free. I couldn't contain the excitement bubbling inside me. I signed the papers without hesitation. By the time I got home that night, it was already dark. I tried using my key, but the lock had been changed. Confused, I knocked on the door, but no one answered. Just as I was about to call the housekeeper, Jaden walked out with his arms crossed, eyes filled with disgust. "Oh, look who finally decided to come home. Why didn't you just drop dead somewhere? Then you wouldn't have to cook for me and Dad anymore." He was mad that I hadn't made his meals today. Jaden's got a picky stomach and a delicate palate. Hardly anyone could cook food he actually liked, and that wouldn't upset him. That's why I'd even taken culinary classes, just to learn how to prepare meals that suited him. Back then, he used to hug me and smile, saying, "Mommy, you're the best chef in the whole world. I want to eat your food forever." But somewhere along the way, everything changed. Now all he wanted was for me to disappear. Suddenly, thunder cracked across the sky and rain poured down without warning. Within seconds, I was drenched to the bone. I had nowhere to hide. I looked up and spoke gently. "Jaden, can I please come inside? I'll catch a cold if I stay out here." He sneered. "You think I care? You wanted to be out so bad. Why don't you just stay out?" "Jaden, who are you talking to?" a woman's voice called sweetly from inside. Valentina Burns walked over in sky-high heels and wrapped her arms around Jaden's shoulders like they belonged to each other. When she saw me, she couldn't hold back a laugh. "Oh, it's you. Sorry, sweetheart, but Nick said he'd be spending the night with me today. Guess you'll have to sleep outside." Then she turned to Jaden. "Come on, Jaden. Dinner's ready. Your dad's waiting for us." "Yay. I love eating with you, Aunt V." Jaden beamed and took her hand. "You're the best." Chapter 3. I watched them walk back inside, their silhouettes warm and close. My chest ached. The boy I raised, the one I poured every ounce of my heart into, couldn't see a thing I'd done for him. Instead, he clung to a hostess Nick brought home just because she looked a little like Gianna. It was too late to find a cab, and the rain kept getting heavier. I curled up in the corner by the gate like some stray dog, trying to shield myself from the downpour. Just when I thought I'd have to sit there all night, the door opened. The housekeeper stepped out with an umbrella. "Madam, Mr. Fusco said you can come in." My mind was half frozen, but I managed a nod and dragged myself inside. The first thing I saw was Jaden curled up in Valentina's lap, watching TV, while Nick peeled fruit beside them. They looked like the picture-perfect family. I ignored them and headed upstairs, but Nick stopped me. "You know Jaden's stomach can only handle food you make. From now on, don't stay out for more than an hour." I gave a cold, tired smile and said calmly, "Then you better hire a professional nutritionist soon. Or maybe have Miss Burns learn the recipes. I've got them written down. We'll be divorced soon, remember." A sharp clang rang out. Nick had slammed the fruit knife onto the plate, the sound grating. "Arya, have I been too soft with you? Is that why you think you can talk to me like this?" He pushed back his chair and marched over to me, grabbing my wrist in a bruising grip. "You throw the word divorce around like it means nothing? You really think I won't go through with it?" "Of course he would. Why wouldn't he? He never loved me. Not really. The only reason he hadn't divorced me already was because of Jaden. He wanted his son to believe he still had a perfect little family. I stayed calm, looked him dead in the eye. Then maybe you should just ask Jaden if he even wants me around. Ask him if he cares whether we stay together. Right on cue, Jaden's voice cut through the room, dripping with disdain. Dad, I've been wanting you to divorce her for years. I hate her. I like Aunt V better. Valentina hurriedly covered his mouth. Jaden, honey, you can't say things like that. It'll hurt your mom. She said the right words, sure, but the sparkle of excitement in her eyes betrayed her true feelings. She's not my mom. I don't want to murder her as my mother, Jaden shouted, glaring at me with hatred. I shrugged at Nick and said dryly, There, you heard him. He doesn't want me around. Can we finally get divorced now? Nick's brows furrowed. He turned to Valentina. Valentina, take Jaden downstairs. Valentina hesitated, disappointment flashing in her eyes, but she nodded and led Jaden away. I looked at her retreating figure and said again, You and Jaden both like her. Why don't you make her Mrs. Fusco instead? I'm done with the title. You're really that eager to throw me at another woman? His voice was low, dangerous. I stared at him, genuinely confused. What did he even mean by that? He loved Gianna. Everyone knew it. Even after 5 years since her death, he never moved on. He'd never looked at me with affection. I was just a stand-in, someone he used when his body needed something, nothing more. And now, he'd finally found Valentina, someone who looked so much like Gianna it was eerie. Shouldn't he be thrilled? But instead of answering, his expression darkened. He turned abruptly and barked over his shoulder. Valentina, come back. She peeked back in, surprised. Before she could ask anything, Nick grabbed her wrist and dragged her down the hall. You want to see us together, Arya? He snapped. Fine. I'll give you what you want. And with that, he yanked her into the bedroom and slammed the door. Not long after, the sounds of moaning slipped through the walls. I felt nothing. I'd never come to this house for love. I came to repay a debt. That was it. I never let my heart get involved, never expected anything more than cold indifference. Nick had always loved Gianna, and now he'd found someone who mirrored her so perfectly it was almost grotesque. Valentina was his second chance, a living, breathing shadow of the woman he'd never stopped grieving. He should be happy. I checked the time. My flight was leaving soon. Quietly, I slid the divorce agreement under his door, picked up my suitcase, and headed downstairs. But just as I reached the front door, Jaden stepped in front of me, blocking my path. With one sharp kick, he knocked over my suitcase. What, a couple harsh words and now you're storming out? His voice was dripping with contempt. You think this little act will get my dad's attention? That he'll come chasing after you like some movie scene? You're pathetic. I didn't say a word. I just bent down, calmly picked up my suitcase, and started walking around him. Then, out of nowhere, Jaden grabbed the fruit knife from the table and lunged. It came at me fast, knife angled right toward my chest, his face twisted with anger. The boy I raised now holds a knife to my chest. Should I see him as my son or my executioner?